Good evening, everyone, and once again, a very warm welcome and welcome back to the SESL platform. As we have heard from a lot of experts in the past, communication is one of the most important 21st century skills without which you can't succeed. And as they have said, that if you can communicate good, you can do very good in life. But if you can communicate well, you can work miracles in your life, my dear friends, right? And you must have noticed this in your house as well. Sometimes you want to communicate something to your students or your children rather, but you're not able to do it well. The intention is something, but you say something. There are a lot of egos involved while communicating, with the students, with the parents, with the teachers also sometimes. So how do we manage this? How do we communicate effectively? It's a very important art and a challenge today. And to learn this art, we have another prolific speaker with us. His name is Mr. Pranay Oswal. He has done his bachelor's from the renowned Symbiosis University. He holds an MBA in international marketing from Edith Cowan University, Australia. He also possesses a postgraduate diploma in corporate mergers and acquisitions law from the Asian School of Cyber Law. Having said that, he is a founder and managing director of IQ, where they have published 7 books. It's a very, very, very interesting organization they work with, and they're working with 300 plus schools and 75,000 students across the country. He also serves as a senior director on the board of Passet Education India. It's a training and development country. He's also the territory head of the ECA of India, PCMC district. And not only that, he's working with a lot of schools, training them, coaching them, and the Association of Primary and Education Research. He has also worked with 2 Fortune 500 companies, WNS Global, Manpower Incorporated, which are both listed on the New York Stock Exchange. He's also worked with Bennett Coleman India, where he's won a list of awards, the National Top Performer Award, Pune District Top Performer Award, the Highest Revenue Generator Award. I mean, the list is endless. Not only that, he's worked with a lot of organizations pro bono offering his services, and he also loves composing music on his piano. So my dear friends, without further ado, I give you your speaker for the day, Mr. Pranay Oswal. So Pranay, welcome on board, handing it over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Rajesh. So first of all, a very good evening, everyone. And thank you very much, Principal Ma'am, Mrs. Revati Srinivasan. Thank you very much, Rajesh. It's my honor to be here today and to address you all on one of the most sensitive topics to most of our hearts, and something sometimes a couple of us are really comfortable discussing this. Sometimes we are not really comfortable discussing this. But having said these things, today we're going to quickly cover a couple of those points, starting from managing egos and the art of communication. So having said this, I'll quickly run through a couple of things which we're going to talk about today. But before I take you that, I just hope my screen is visible to all. Backs communication. Third, we're going to talk about what are the things that primarily includes under communication. We'll talk about communication barriers. We'll talk about some poisonous skins of communication. We'll talk about the types of listeners. We'll talk about certain listening skills. We'll talk about the communication toolbox. And last but not the least, we're going to talk about managing egos. Without taking a lot of time and without really emphasizing too much on all these points now, let's go step by step and we talk about communication in education. So the challenges over here are simply pretty high. Reason being obvious because the number of stakeholders involved in the field of education are very high. So it starts from the management, it starts from the principal, it starts from teachers, it starts from the teaching faculty, it starts from the non-teaching faculty, it goes towards parents, it goes towards the students, it goes towards multiple stakeholders. So the reason why it is really important for us to make sure that we really talk very carefully in the field of education primarily, reason being that whenever we talk about communication, the amount of levels which are involved in the field of education are very high. There are too many stakeholders involved into this. And an interesting thing is the topic about education, everybody has something to contribute towards this topic. So be it a parent, be it a student, be it a colleague, be it your principal, be it your co-principal, be it the supervisor, be it the vendor, every person has to say something or the other about it. And because of all these things, the stakes are very high. And because of the multiple target audiences which are involved into this, the emotions involved into this, the parameters which go at every single step are very high. Having said this, we also talking about the three most important things when under communication. So the number one is body language, number two is paralinguistic, and number three is words. A lot of people talk about written communication, a lot of people talk about verbal communication, a lot of people also talk about other forms of communication. But today, primarily we'll talk about body language, and today we're going to talk about what really includes apart from words when it comes to communication. So we're going to significantly talk about the types of non-verbal communication. When I say non-verbal communication, there are a lot of things over here. So it starts from your posture. So sometimes how you sit, how you talk, how you really, without even sending a signal to the other person, it becomes really tricky for you to really know what exactly is happening. So number one is posture. Number two is body language. So how are you really sending a signal with regards to whoever the person is involved in your conversation? That really matters. Third is eye contact. So when we are talking to somebody, a lot of people have this tendency and they really try to look down on you. So when I say look down on you, they try to make you feel really inferior with regards to their eyeballs, with regards to their eye contact. So they try to look at your shoes, they try to look at your belt, they try to look at your clothes, they try to pass a very demeaning remark on your clothes. And sometimes this could be a very difficult thing when it comes to one of the most important things under non-verbal communication. Another important thing is blinking. A lot of people have this habit of constantly blinking their eyes and talking. This is something we can always try to avoid, and that is something which is very important. Maybe sometimes we do not really pay too much of attention towards it, but this is really, really, really important. The next thing which I'm going to talk about is the tone of your voice. In which tone you're addressing your students, in which tone you're talking to your seniors. So there is something called as upward communication, and there is something called as downward communication. Upward communication is how you talk to people who are senior in rank, who are senior to you with regards to age, with regards to position, with regards to hierarchy, or with regards to any other factor which has to make a wherein you have to make a conversation with somebody in the upward in the it's actually called upward direction conversation. And the second thing is downward communication, which is nothing but how do you talk to somebody who is junior to you. So that's something very important to keep a track and keep a complete watch on your tone. Another very important thing is facial expressions. So let's say if I'm talking to you today and if I'm making a lot of faces, if I'm not smiling, if I'm not demonstrating empathy in my voice, if I'm not really keeping my voice under control, and if I'm not really modulating my voice and just going here and there, so the amount of facial expressions which are going in sync will not be really something which you would all like to listen to. Another important thing is smell. Body odor, cologne, fragrance, and the essence which you try to which is something which we don't really pay attention, but especially in the field of training, especially in the field of program delivery, all the teachers wherein they are involved into it, it's very important. If not smell good, at least try not to smell bad. That is very important. The next thing which is very important under non-verbal communication is time. When I say time, a lot of people have this tendency of always being late for every single thing that they do. This is something very important because what really happens here is when this becomes a habit for a lot of people to turn late for meetings, and just something everybody has to delay only for that one person most of the time. Next is personal presentation and power dressing. This is a different topic altogether, but when I say personal presentation, it is very important to be well dressed. It is very important to be neatly dressed, wear iron clothes, and show up to work. Another important thing is gestures. The gestures that we use, we're doing like this, we're doing like this, we're doing like this. So there are a lot of gestures which we can try. The expressions, the finger movements that we're trying to use here and there. That's also something very important. Another thing is pitch and the tone of your voice. When I say pitch of your voice, how high I'm using. So especially in music, especially in classroom delivery, what pitch are we using to control and modulate our voice? That is something really important. So these are few of those important things which are included under types of non-verbal communication. Moving forward, there are a lot of communication barriers. So communication barriers are primarily into three types. One is from the communicator's point of view, second is from the receiver's point of view, and third is from the external barriers which are completely out of control. So quickly we'll cover up certain points. I'm sure a couple of them are self-explanatory, but we'll try to cover a few of them. One is unwillingness to say things differently from the communicator standpoint. When I say unwillingness to say something differently, trying to use the same thing and not being different over there. Second thing is not able to relate to the other person differently. The other person is trying to be something else. The other person is trying to demonstrate something else. But what really happens is the demonstrative ability for you to possess some knowledge and make sure that you relate to the other person differently. Third thing is unwillingness to new learning approaches. So this comes under training and development. So we at Bassett Education India, we also train a lot of people under training and development, as in what is it that you can do to position and to talk differently. So we also have certain programs with us exclusively focused on how to have different approaches to your communication patterns. Next is lacking self-confidence. So when I say lacking self-confidence, it simply means not holding enough subject matter knowledge, enough information about that subject, enough demonstrating too much of knowledge, and not demonstrating too much of knowledge over here. All right. So when I say lack of self-confidence over here, a lot of times what happens is a maths teacher, a science teacher, a physics teacher, a bio teacher is trying to say something, but if it is not really to the point, this can also be something to do with self-confidence primarily, because what really happens is the person is not able to understand what you're trying to say. The next thing we are going to talk about is lack of enthusiasm. It's very important to make sure that you are enthusiastic throughout your program delivery. Voice quality, not holding too much of prejudice before you start your deliveries of any of your sessions. Disagreement between your verbal and non-verbal messages. So what really happens is I'm trying to say something with a different conviction, but the body language and my non-verbal communication is something different. So we have to make sure from the communication point of view, this is not really a communication barrier. Lack of feedback. So it's always important to take decent amount of validation from people in the hierarchy, which really helps us in talking and taking things forward in the right direction. Lack of motivation and training, which we just covered. Another important thing is language and vocabulary level. So very important for all of us to have a very simple language when we are talking to people, because always holding a very high vocabulary will not really be nice, because if the other person is not really understanding what we are talking, the whole purpose is defeated. Last but not the least is lack of self-awareness. It's important what we are talking. It's very important to have some measure in our conversation. That's why holding some self-awareness is very important. Moving forward towards the receiver's point of view. So the receiver also needs to have decent amount of selective perception over here. So not necessarily the person who is going to talk with you will really be in the same frame of mind what you're going to talk. So this is primarily, I'm going to talk about communication barriers from the receiver standpoint. Next is unwillingness to change. A lot of people are just not adaptive to change. They are just adamant enough and not really keen to take things forward and just be on the same style of thinking. Lack of interest in the topic. Sometimes people are just not interested in the topic because they find it absolutely irrelevant. Prejudice is something which is also common between a communicator and a receiver, because sometimes if a person is holding a stupid belief about what the person is talking, this could again have his own individual set of beliefs which could be against it. And last but not the least, your own value systems. So what are we talking over here? How are we taking things forward? And all those things. Moving towards external factors of communication and external barriers, this thing is completely important over here, because what really happens is the venue, the point from where you're talking, the venue where you're actually sitting and doing the conversation or establishing a new conversation with somebody, the effect of the noise around you. As good as we are all talking on this webinar today, on this live session, but all of a sudden, if there are certain technical glitches, this also adds communication barriers. Next thing is the temperature. Also, another important factor of environment is the external barrier is the status and education from where people come from. Sometimes if a person is coming from a different strata of the society, our a pattern and the way we perceive towards holding that conversation with that person can change significantly. And last but not the least is timing. What time of the day, what time of the night are you expecting to hold that conversation? If somebody is trying to speak to somebody all at the middle of the night, somebody is talking to somebody at 1 o'clock in the morning, or somebody is talking to someone at 5 o'clock in the morning, so maybe that conversation will not really be that effective, because it really matters a lot over here. Next thing we are going to talk about, one of my favorite topics, which I really love to talk about, is 8 deadly sins of communication. So when I say 8 deadly sins of communication, these are those sins which are very important for every single profession, every single practice, and every single thing that we do in life. Number one is negativity. So when I say negativity, so it's very important for all of us to be completely away from toxic people. The certain people are in the frame of always trying to show the pessimistic side of everything in life. especially in these times of COVID-19. We feel that everybody's trying to give some opinion. Everybody's talking about the number of cases going up. Everybody's talking about the number of casualties happening in the country and around the world too. So we try to see the good thing over here. We try to be as optimistic as we can, and we try to refrain from all the negativity and keep it away from us. The second point I'm going to talk about is judging. So non-verbal conversation and regular conversation and body language and eye contact. We just spoke about those things. So especially in times of a new establishment of a new contact. So when you're getting in touch with somebody, you observe this thing that the other person is trying to look at you in a very different manner. He's trying to look at your clothes. He's trying to look at your hair. He's trying to look at your teeth. Maybe he's talking about something else all of a sudden. But what really happens is we end up judging the other person. So we should consciously make it a point that we don't judge people again and again. The third thing I'm going to talk about is complaining. So when I say complaining, so complaining apparently happens to be the national art of our country. It happens to be the national sport of our nation. Given a chance, we can talk about everything. We can complain about sports. We can complain about politics. We can complain about Bollywood. We can complain about news. We can complain about weather. We can complain about our own country. We can complain about our bureaucracy. We can complain about our education system. We can complain about our own people. We can complain about our family people. So certain people have this tendency of going on and on and on and on when it comes to complaining, which happens to be one of the most deadly sins according to me. So we should be away from all those people and encourage people to be as positive as they can, especially during these times. The fourth thing is excuses. So when I say excuses, certain people have this natural tendency of always going on and on and on, especially when it comes to giving excuses. They'll be late to office, they'll not show up to work, always run away from their responsibility, always try to say that this is something not in my domain, this is something which is not a part of my KRA, this is something which is not my duty. So this is something which we always observe between different head of the departments, between different houses in schools. Maybe the greenhouse captain is saying something else, maybe the yellow house captain is saying something else. So excuses is something we should stay as away as we can. Another important thing is exaggeration. So a lot of people have this tendency of going beyond a limit and saying things which are really not relevant. So exaggeration is something which it's completely self-explanatory. So one should always try to refrain from getting into the zone of exaggeration. Next, we are going to talk about is being opinionated, the seventh one. So a lot of people, they usually have this tendency, it's my way or the highway. It's their way or no way at all. So without even being asked, they'll end up giving their opinions. So we always have that one person in our school, one person in our association, one person in our office, and so on and so forth, who will always be ready. And even if you do not ask him anything, he'll be more than happy to give you certain opinions. And last but not the least, which is very important for all of us to be away from that poisonous sin of communication, is lying. Lying later turns into a big turnoff because it leads to a lot of integrity issues after a certain point. So one must refrain from lying because it really doesn't help anyone, because to cover one lie, you have to lie at least 10 more times. So the 8 deadly sins, we are going to talk about the poisonous sins of communication: negativity, judging, gossip, lying, complaining, excuses, exaggeration, and being opinionated. So these are those 8 sins which we should always try to stay away from. The next thing which we are going to talk about today is the 5 types of listening. So at number 5, we have the marginal listener. So this person is very interesting. This person will only listen to what he feels is important. All right. So especially in business, especially in government, especially in politics. So you'll find a lot of people who are marginal listeners, who will only listen to what they feel is important for them from the surface. They will never go to the depth of the problem. They will never go to the depth of the conversation, and they will only try to listen to those things which are important to them and important for their work. The next thing is the non-listener. He'll act as if he's listening to you, but he will not listen to you. That's the number 4 type, the fourth type of listener. The third type of listener is the competitive listener. So this is something which we always come across in our school during our debate competitions, during other competitions. So when I say the competitive listener, that this is that person. Every time when you're saying something, there has to be somebody or the other who's trying to compete with the content, compete with something or the other, and say, I know this better, I know this better, I know this better, and he will never pay attention to any of your talks. The fourth, the second one is the evaluative listener. He will analyze, he will understand, he will listen to you, he will try to find logic and apply logic and then try to listen to you. And the number one kind of the number one listener is the active listener. So when I say the active listener, he's that person who's actually making an effort, who is consciously putting in his heart, consciously putting in on all his ears and listening to you. So these are the five types of listener. Number one is the marginal listener. The number two is the non-listener. The number four, so number five is marginal listener. Number three is the comparative listener. Number two is the evaluative listener. And number one is the active listener. Having said this, improving listening skills, what do you do to enhance your overall listening skills? One is one should not be too occupied or too preoccupied when somebody is trying to say something. It is absolutely self-explanatory. I think all of you all have understood this. Second is being open-minded and non-defensive. So be open to certain things, be open to new thoughts, be open to something. If you're not aware about something, try to have an open ear over there and try to understand what the other person is trying to tell you. Next is not being defensive when something is told to you and not taking it personal. We'll also talk about this very soon, shortly, in the next few seconds when we talk about egos. That is something which we all would really love because we are also going to coin a new term for ego on this platform today. Next is minimizing interruptions. So a lot of people have this habit, especially when somebody is talking. So we should always make sure we minimize all the forms of interruptions, especially from our cell phone, especially from interrupting the other person when he's trying to complete. So we Indians are brilliant. In fact, they're all gold medalists at this. When somebody is trying to say something, they will try to jump into the conversation and try to complete it before the other person is telling it to them or completing and finishing the sentence over there. Next is effective listening, hearing, interpreting when necessary, understanding the message and relating to it. Under this thing, it's important for all of us to make sure to make a conscious effort to listen to the other person and try to interpret, try to filter, try to process the information and not just react to everything what the other person is saying. It's always important to ask questions. And last but not the least is try not to construct a sentence when the other person is trying to speak. Usually what we always observe is when somebody is talking to us, we also end up getting into a conversation and say that I want to say something else, and we start paraphrasing the sentence already and start constructing the sentence in our minds. So we should do all these things consciously to improve our listening skills. Very important thing for all of us, which I would really like to talk about, which is something which is new to a lot of people. So communication toolbox. So we are all gifted with this beautiful communication toolbox given by God. And most of us have not even opened this engine yet. So it's our vocal cords. If we try to use if we try to use this properly, we can create magic and we can try to create a lasting impression in front of any person wherever we go. So we talk about the first thing is register. So register has to do a lot to do with your voice and accent. So when I say voice and accent, so let's say today if I'm using a falsetto, if I'm raising my pitch and talking to you, hello everyone, how are you talking today? Is this really interesting for all of you? So maybe what really happens is you don't really enjoy the conversation because there is some falsetto. Let's not get too technical about all these terms. So register is something wherein it has to do with the quality of your voice, the way you throw your words. So we often trust and we respect and we vote and we relate authority and power with those people who talk from their heart. So we always vote for those politicians who have a base. We always vote for those people who talk from their heart and who have some depth and some measure in their conversation. So register, a classical example of register, of using the register properly is the current Prime Minister, Honorable Narendra Modi ji. So when he is talking, we always observe there is a pattern in his, he's a good orator, he's a brilliant speaker. So when I say he's a brilliant speaker, he's using his register absolutely properly. The next thing is pitch. So if I have to use my volume and if I have to, not my volume, sorry, if I have to use my pitch, where is this kept? Why is this not seen? Where is my blazer? I can't see my tie. So the tone, the pitch we use is very important, especially in a classroom setting. So my humble request to all my teachers, it's very important for all of us to speak very politely, especially during these times when all of us are using virtual platforms and remote learning tools for all our students. So pitch is the second thing. Third is the rate of speech. How fast are we talking? How fast are we going with our talk? The pace, the overall pace in which we are talking, that is something very important. It's always very important. I'm sorry about this. I'm also not sticking to this because we have limitation and we are pressed with time today. I'm also going very fast because we have to cover 3-4 more slides. But pace is something very important for all of us to make sure that we keep a neutral pace. And one of the most beautiful things over here is silence. It's very important to maintain a pregnant pause in your conversations. If you have something important to announce in your classroom, if you have something important to announce in your boardrooms, that is silence. Always, it's very important for all of us to make sure we refrain from using any of those words, starting from, what I mean, actually, basically, right, as in, all those sounds, these are all filler words. The more we do not use any of these words, better we become as better efficient communicators. The next thing we are going to talk about, again, the same example I'm going to talk about to explain you pretty well over here is, if I'm going to talk about the same communication module with all of you today, if I'm not modulating my voice, this is called prosody. Not having any variation, not having any change in my tone, and having a monotone basically. And there is something called as repetitive prosody. So when I say repetitive prosody, it's nothing but, again, two classical examples. One is Barack Obama. When he's talking, he has a lot of prosody. He makes sure that the use and the modulation of his voice is done remarkably. At the same time, if we talk about a current of a erstwhile Prime Minister, Honorable Mr. Manmohan Singh, he has a repetitive prosody over here. Even if he is asking a question, he will not sound as if it's a question. There's a flat monotone over there. The fifth one is volume. When I say volume, it's very important for all of us to know that the volume in which we communicate with the other person is absolutely important. The last thing is tempo. Temper is nothing but how clearly are you talking? Are you eating your words? Are you biting your V's? Are you opening your mouth completely when you're talking certain words? Because there are certain words, they should be sounding as if that is as good as hot chocolate when you're talking. So the usage of certain words should be so important that when we are talking about it, it's absolutely important that we sound like the conversation is happening like a hot chocolate. And we should make it a point that we take sincere efforts in doing all these things. So these are those 6 important toolbox things which we should all practice. 1 is register, 2 is pitch, 3 is pace, 4 is tempo, 5th is prosody, and 6th is volume. Moving forward, we are doing some quick exercises before you talk, before you go live on any conversation anywhere around the world, or in your classroom, or in your office, or any profession which you belong to. It's extremely important for all of you to practice certain words which are very important before you start, because these are exercises for your tongue. These are small exercises for your throat. These are small exercises for you to speak from your chest, to speak from your lungs, to speak from your heart, to speak from your stomach, whatever you call it. But it's okay to be a kid for a moment, because a lot of us have not even started this engine, which we are all gifted with in our communication toolbox. So first thing is, if wherever you are, whichever part of the world you're watching me from, all the viewers, I request all of you to please do this exercise together. Arms up, deep, breathe in and sign out. Breathe in and sign out. This helps in pumping up your lungs. Next thing is, do this and do this. It's okay. It's completely all right. I might sound a little funny, but believe me, everyone, these are those exercises. The top trainers of the world, the top voice and accent trainers of the world, they do this before going for any speech, any program delivery. They try to do this and do this. This is kind of a champagne for this is kind of a hot chocolate for your tongue. Every time when you do this, you're trying to roll your R. Next is brrr. So try to raise your volume and raise your pitch over here. This really helps you make your words sound very clear. Another word is for your lips. Ba 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 ba. So these are those exercises. If you do it regularly, what really happens is, when you're talking to anyone per se, your words are absolutely clear. Next is for your tongue. La 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 la. Open your mouth and use your tongue generously. Open your tongue and use your tongue generously. La 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 la. And last but not the least, it's basically whenever you say words starting from V, especially words like Victoria, victory, try to bite your V and not just say victory. Try to bite your V, saying them victory. Because every time when you bite your lower lip, the word pronunciation, and that is the right way to say any word starting from V, particularly. So these are a few exercises for communication. And the last slide, which I'm going to talk about, is managing egos. Now, this is one of the most important topics, which is very dear to my heart. And I request all of you to just try to understand, like, I'm not the only person on this webinar today who tries to take things personally, or who tries to take things professionally, or something wrong has happened to him at some point in life. So what's important is, if at all you're doing, if you're doing a public address anywhere, if you're addressing the people at any part of the world. So what really matters is you will come across a lot of people who will look at their phones. You will come across a lot of people. For that matter, I'll give you a classical example of our ego. I think we are just left for the last 2-3 minutes, and I'll wrap up my session. If I'm, if I may just talk about this egos, and we take things to the next level from here. So what happens really is, let's say if you're driving a bike or if you're going in a car, and all of a sudden if somebody is trying to overtake you, right? So what really happens is immediately you try to take it personally. Immediately it gets onto your ego. Why is this person trying to overtake me? Why is this person not letting me go first? So our egos are sometimes so small that we end up competing and end up racing with somebody who's not even known to us. Sometimes when it comes to as good as asking for the first seat in your flight, asking for the first seat if you're going by train. So maybe he or she had a bad day perhaps. Or sometimes what really happens is it's very important for all of us to make sure that we think positively in times of adversity. So when I say think positively in times of adversity, it simply means that think positively. Maybe if all of you or some of you are using your cell phones today while listening to me, maybe you all are actually taking notes. Maybe you're expecting an important message from somebody. Maybe you're waiting for an OTP from your banking password somewhere. Maybe you have your daughter or your son going somewhere and he has not messaged you yet. That is the reason perhaps. And if you're making notes about any of these things which we have spoken today, it's brilliant because that is a smart thing to do if you're taking any notes on your smartphone. So there are a lot of things. Sometimes people are taking a look at their cell phones. Sometimes people are not listening to you. Sometimes people are just acting as if they're listening to you. So one of those important things for all of you today, I'll give you a small piece of advice today. Whenever you talk to somebody, whenever you get into a conversation with somebody, and if you think it's getting too personal, try to think of a referee. I'm sure all of you have seen WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment matches. I'm sure a couple of you all have seen football matches. I'm sure a couple of you all have seen hockey matches. So referee is that one person across any of the sports games particularly who has never spoken with some goodness. So he's that one person who is always questioned. You are a loser. You don't know anything. You don't understand the game. You have not seen him. You have not done this. So whenever somebody is doing this, a referee is not supposed to take it personally, and neither is he supposed to take it professionally. So try to understand one thing and try to understand your value over there when you are getting into any argument, any conversation, any debate, any kind of a disagreement with somebody, because what really happens is that is not made to you, that is made for the situation. So everything when it comes to me, it's about referee. The moment you try to change the M and try to make it W, that is the moment when you think properly about certain things. And that is the exact moment when you start thinking, right, that it's not about me, but it's actually about the situation. So I'm going to talk about one brilliant exercise. And I just request if Brijesh or somebody from the tech team, if he's around, if they can please turn their camera on. I'm going to ask you 4 questions or 5 questions. And if it's something which is really keen, and let me just understand if you're trying to get my point here. So,
Sure.
sure. So I'm sure, Brijesh, you can hear me now?
Yeah, very clear, loud and clear.
Okay, I'm just trying to go a little away from my screen. Can you see this $1 billion note, Brijesh?
Yes.
I just hope it is visible enough from this webcam, which I have in front of me.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So let me ask you, Brijesh, do you need this $1 billion?
Who wouldn't? Yes, I do.
Super, super. Let me ask you the same question. If I crush these $1 billion, all right,
Right.
I'm asking you, Brijesh, would you still need these $1 billion?
Yes, I would.
Let me just go further. Assume these are not coronavirus times. I'm going to stamp on this. I'm going to throw this somewhere. I'm going to again dump it somewhere. Again, I'm going to ask you the same question. Brijesh, do you still need these $1 billion?
Yes, I do.
So the whole point is, no matter what, no matter who, whoever you are, wherever you are, people will try to ignore you. People will try to criticize you. People will try to attack you. People will try to stamp on you. People will try to crumple you with their words. People will try to spit you out. People will walk all over you. Remember one thing, you are those $1 billion and your value will never change. Thank you very much, everyone. It was a pleasure talking to you all.
Oh, brilliant, Pranay. Thank you so much. I wish you had come into my life a little earlier when I was a teacher. So many wonderful tips that I could have put into use while taking lectures. And especially I love that bit about managing the egos. It has happened to all of us. I'm driving my car, somebody races across and I feel, oh no, what's happening? I need to race past him again, So these things keep happening to all of us. And thank you so much for these wonderful tips that you shared. What are the barriers in communication? What do people think? What are the important things? What should the exercise that should be done regularly to communicate well?
No,
These are some good.
if you could please repeat, Brajesh, because I just lost the last
Yeah,
30
sure.
seconds what you told.
Oh, sure, sure, sure. So I said, thank you so much for sharing these wonderful tips. It has
Thank
happened
you.
to me as well, driving on the road, somebody racing past me, and I feel, oh no, what's happening? I need to race past him as well. So
Uh-huh,
thank you so
uh-huh.
much for bringing out that being the referee perspective is very important, very
True.
critical, that you need to keep calm. And
Mm-hmm.
thank you, very important for teaching the communication skills as well. What are the barriers in communication? What are the
True.
things that you have to be aware of in your speaking, the tone, the pitch, the prosody? I mean, absolutely wonderful brought out. So
True.
we have
So
a lot of questions.
since we are there
Uh-huh.
today, Brajesh, on this beautiful platform, since we are all on the Singhani Educational Forum over here. So since we
Uh-huh.
are all today over here, so whenever somebody is talking about ego, so it is just a terminology which I just tried coining it while I was driving from my residence to my workspace. So the full
Uh-huh.
form of ego, let's try to give it a new birth today. So it's
Sure.
as good as eliminating your goodness out.
Oh, wow.
So whenever somebody is trying to say something bad, something, so it's always very important for each one of us to keep our ego intact, most importantly, and also keep
Right.
the other person's ego intact. So
Right.
whenever somebody is trying to do that, if at all we are getting personal over there, and if we are trying to do
Uh-huh.
that, just try to remember from that movie, uh, Random Act of Kindness, right? So whenever
Mm-hmm.
somebody is trying to get personal, so some goodness is going away from all our lives. So what we can
Right.
do is always remember the three words over here: eliminating goodness out.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Very,
yeah,
very well put. Thank you so much for that.
thank you, Brajesh.
So now we have got a lot of questions coming in from the audience, and the
Sure.
best part is it's a mix of questions. They're coming from students, parents, and some working professionals as well. So let me start with a very basic question. Now, this
Super.
is a thing which has happened to me as well. Whenever I'm visiting a new conference, how do I
Mhm.
meet and say hello to an opposite person? So basically, how do you build a rapport with somebody new that you're meeting for the first time? If you can throw some light on it, it'll be great. How to break the ice when you're communicating with someone for the first time?
Sure. So one of the first things that you talk about when you're interacting with a stranger, is that your question? If I've understood that right, Brajesh?
Yes.
So the
Yes,
first thing is,
absolutely.
don't talk about you. Don't talk
Right.
about yourself. So when you are interacting with with a stranger per se, so always start with appreciation. Talk about some good things and be honest and be completely honest over that. So you can use the hail technique over here, which I honestly practice. So that's how I met you, Brajesh. So
Right.
all the viewers who don't know us over here, we also met through some conference once upon a time in our lives. And that's how we connected. So I use the hail technique. So one is HAI. So the first one is H, being honest with your approach. A
Right.
is be authentic, whatever you say about the other person. I is have some integrity in your conversation. And L is demonstrate some love and empathy and have
Oh,
some measure in
lovely.
your conversation. So if you're talking to a stranger, try to be as friendly as you can. Don't have a very strict, because try to first wear a smile. So it
Right.
really helps for me. It really helps for me because it's okay to compliment the other person if the other person is has done something really good, and if you're really keen to connect with that person. So that is something
Right.
you can use the hail practice: honesty, authenticity, integrity, and love and measure.
Oh, lovely. That's a wonderful note for everybody out there. When you're
Thank
meeting
you.
new people, remember the word hail, right? So moving to
Yes.
the next question, presentations have become an integral part of everybody's lives, be it workplace, be it schools, be it doing projects, anything that you've worked on. That is
Mm-hmm.
one aspect. And second is going out and successfully presenting it. So
Mm-hmm.
what are the important things that we should keep in mind when we are presenting something? And can you talk about one successful presentation that you have done in your past and why you think it went very well?
So I'll talk about one of those presentations which I did during my MBA. So our project was one of the best during our MBA. So we had this
Sure.
international business projects. So and we had to submit. So the people who had come over there to evaluate a project, they were from Harvard. So one of those
Okay.
gentlemen was also representing Ashoka Foundation. Currently, he's one of the advisors from Harvard, who's also an advisor to these people. So there are
Okay.
certain people who are watching your presentation. They already know what you're going to talk,
Right.
and there are second kind of people who are watching your presentation, they are not interested. So first thing for you to make sure when you are addressing any presentation for to any audience per se,
Mm-hmm.
any profile across every domain. So first thing is to make sure you demonstrate domain knowledge.
Right.
Study about your topic, because if your confidence comes from two things: one, when you have knowledge, and second, when you have some understanding to process that knowledge.
Right.
Be it a single slide, be it 100 slides or no slides at all, or be it a verbal presentation. So I honestly believe a lot in verbal presentation.
Verbal.
I
Yes.
swear perhaps I'm using a presentation for the first time in my career because it's a YouTube session, because I really don't want to go too fast, because I don't want to waste people's time in taking notes, because the interest level goes off. That's why, to make
Right.
their life easy and just to make sure the flow of the presentation goes systematic, I honestly chose it. But honestly, this is the first time I have ever used a presentation for any of those modules. So be
Right.
very honest over there, demonstrate strong subject knowledge, and most importantly, process that knowledge and know some percentage of your audience, because you never know
Right.
which question will come from where.
Right. Beautiful. So know what your whom you're addressing and then go out for the presentation. Very important. Do your homework, students. Right. Next is a very interesting question, and this is happening to all of us last 2.5 months. I have a 6-year-old daughter. I've experienced this quite a few times. With
Lovely.
hardly any communication at home due to busy schedules, especially when the offices are going on. What's
Mhm.
your advice to parents and students? How do you communicate well, effectively, especially with screen time taking up a lot of kids' time? Hardly parents sit down, talk to the students what is going on, and whenever they do, it's usually about studies. The
Mhm.
normal conversation is, aaj school mein kya hua, kya padhaya,
Mhm.
what did you learn, what did the other
Mhm.
kids do,
Mhm.
rather than talking about life and values. So what is your advice to parents and students
Sure.
here?
So let me ask you, Brijesh. I'll just take you 1 second away from this topic. So today, both of us are working
Sure.
professionals. We are somewhere
Right.
directly or indirectly contributing to the larger good of society by doing something for education. Let me
Right.
remember today, how important is the Pythagoras theorem to you today?
Frankly, not not much. I don't remember last time using it.
Everything that you have studied in trigonometry, how relevant is that in today? Because everything is
Hardly,
in
hardly.
calculators and apps today. You can use all the mechanisms over there.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
it's extremely important for. I'll tell you what I practice with my daughter. I'm a brand new father. I have a
Sure.
two-year-old beautiful daughter. So
Oh
that's
wow,
how what
congratulations
that.
on that.
Thank you. So what I do, Brajesh, is that's what I do with all my nephews and nieces who are there in my life. So I love them and they all love me religiously. So we have a complete no
Right.
nonsense, no materialistic relation with each other. So the beauty is, don't give them knowledge all the time.
Right.
Don't give them too much of information all the time. Try to appreciate them, try to encourage them, try to boost their morale, talk good things about them, tell them what really matters to them in their life. Because what really matters is those small things and those 21st century skills and those life skills which we are all talking about across so many forums today. We have addressed tons of forums during this lockdown, and that one very important thing is 21st century life skills. So it's very
Absolutely.
important for all of us to teach them the value systems, to tell them what is important, what is wrong, tell them how privileged they are, show them certain movies, show them certain documentaries, and try to demonstrate and trigger certain empathy into all of them, because they are not aware about the fact how lucky they are, how privileged they are with everything that they have today. Today they are saying we have to operate from school, we have to work from school. Trust me, people don't have work, and the tragedy is some people don't even have a home today. So
Right.
it's important to tell our kids. And one very important thing, Brajesh, is when we talk to our kids, don't raise your volume. I'm sure you are a brilliant
Absolutely.
father, and you must be a very proud father of a 6-year-old lovely daughter. Not just now, but even when she's 26 or 36 or 46 or 56, try to promise yourself, you use the no spanking policy with your child. Don't hit your child, don't raise your volume,
Absolutely.
don't let any family member raise the volume, because these are small things which really try to damage the ego of your child, and of any child for that matter, from a very early age.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, parents, a very important lesson for all of us out there. Encourage your children, motivate your children, boost their morale. And this is one important aspect that I'm very well connected here with the Singhania group of schools, the value system that they have built from a very young age. The
Mhm.
message is sent loud and clear to all the parents that life is not all about studies, not all about marks. The
Mhm.
values are very important. Holistic development is what it revolves around. So, thank you for that input. Next
True.
question: is it important to be a good listener while communicating? How much important is listening in communication?
It's very important. Trust me. The first thing about communication is to shut up.
Absolutely, absolutely. I do my bit that
Communicate,
here.
communication actually begins when somebody has to shut up.
Right.
I'm sorry for this blunt word, but there is
No,
no
that's
better
that's
way.
that's
There
a
is no better
there's
way
no better way to put it.
how we can dive into the conversation. So I'll tell you what we do at Bassett Education India, and also tell you what we do at IQ. So what really happens is people really go for a lot of examinations. So I'll talk about IQ and I'll also talk about Bassett quickly over here. So A lot of people don't listen to what we say. They just try to, no but this is this, no but this is that, no but इससे क्या फायदा होगा, इससे हमारा और नुकसान होगा, इससे हमारा क्या कुछ नहीं होगा. So there are certain things when we have to go deeper, when we have to dive deeper into that ocean and tell them that this is for your this for the long run, this is for your good, this is for your benefit, because there are certain things which you do not listen over here, and if you try to just counter question and debate and get into that mode, eventually what will happen is you will not end up learning, you will not end up gaining something new, because on average a person processes more than 50,000 thoughts per minute per day.
Wow.
Yes. And out of that 10,000 thoughts are only positive.
Okay.
Yes, which means almost 80%
so
of the thoughts
huge,
which we process
ratio,
are
1:4. Yeah. So for every one positive thought that I'm going to get 4 negative thoughts against that. So parents, very important, be conscious of what you're thinking. Be children, this is especially for you as well. Be conscious of what you're thinking, while communicating, what thoughts are you coming into mind and how are you in control of them. So next question, can communication skills be taught by demonstration is one question that has come in from a parent.
Yes, 100% yes. Communication is I'll say, to explain this thing a little better to you, you asked me, communication can be taught, right? Can it be better? Can we train it? Can we upskill it? So yes,
absolutely.
English is a language, Hindi is a language, Tamil is a language, Bengali is a language, but communication is a skill.
Absolutely.
A skill can be developed, a language can also be learned. Every day, if you're learning one new word, or every day, let's not go with one word, we are grown up, mature adults. Even if we take 10 new words every day, at the end of 1 year, we'll have more than 3,650 new words added to our lexicon, added to our vocabulary.
Absolutely.
Yes. So yes, communication can be trained. So we really help people across all the industries, across all the domains understand. And we are also coming up with a lot of interesting modules in the coming weeks. Exclusively, couple of them are going to be free for all. Couple of them are going to be with some nominal price just to make sure we cover the cost of those faculties. But if at all, you can subscribe to the app. We have also recently launched an app, and they can do a lot of things over there.
Sure. Next question is with most of the time taken up on social media nowadays, we have realized that students have stopped reading less. How important is reading while being a good communicator? If you can throw some light on that.
The moment you stop reading, I think that is the end of your life. So be it a newspaper, be it a book, be it a text message, be it a WhatsApp forward, be it an ebook on your phone these days, or be it a Kindle book on one of your platforms which you're using. So reading is essentially very important, because what really happens is when you stop reading, what really happens is you stop with new information, new knowledge. So the best way, my personal advice to all the students over here is try to read the newspaper at least for 15 minutes a day. If not 15, at least for 5 minutes a day. If you like sports, start with any topic that instigates your interest level. If you do not like sports, start with puzzles, start with comics, start with stories. If nothing really excites you, for all the girls, especially if they like fashion, read the page 3 in Bombay Times, read the page 3 not read before, which was not processed before. So reading is really important. Sometimes people also complain that when I start reading, I feel like sleeping, right? So for those people, especially for those category of readers, particularly, try reading those topics which are interesting to you, which instigate. So a lot of people say the moment I read something logically, I feel like going off to sleep. Start reading books on stories, start reading non-fiction material. I personally enjoy non-fiction. I read biographies, I read documentaries. It's really fun because that really helps me give a different perspective to the entire thing. So yes, reading is very important.
Wow, the sleeping part hit me really hard there. I used to teach history and civics. So my students used to tell me on a lighter note that, sir, when we don't get to sleep, we read civics, we sleep like a baby after that.
Another thing over here, Brajesh, is a lot of people, if they really feel reading boring, these days, audiobooks are really helping a lot of people.
Yes.
So information coming in any form. So as per the theory of Dr. Howard Gardner, right, he talks about 3 ways of learning. One is through listening, second is through watching, and third is through doing. That is kinesthetic. So these days, when we are using a cell phone, we are actually using our listening, our auditory skills and our visual skills together. So based on this, I think the cell phone is one of the most beautiful devices of the 21st century. If you have a data plan on your phone, if you have internet connectivity at your home, if you're using any kind of browser, you have no reason to complain.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's very,
Yes.
very well put there.
Yeah.
Now, in the age of emerging media convergence, how relevant do you think interpersonal communication skills will be going forward?
It's very important. It's very, very, very important because although the physical touch is missing in this world particularly. Again, I'll use the same theory to explain you this answer. Out of those 8
Sure.
multiple intelligences of Dr. Howard Gardner, who's currently the senior director of Project Zero at Harvard University, he's a living legend with
Right.
29 different laureates from 29 different universities of the world. So when we are
Oh,
talking about him, interpersonal communication is simply important. Reason being, especially in these times, you said, right?
right.
Yeah, it is
Absolutely.
important because
Especially
the
in
physical.
the, yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
sorry,
please,
please,
please
please,
continue.
please,
Please
sorry,
continue.
please complete.
So, especially in the age of emerging media convergence, with so much exposure to different forms of media, how do students, focus on interpersonal communication skills with so much information at their disposal?
So schools play an important role over here, Brajesh. So we should encourage them. They get into a lot of United Nations forums, kind of the UN forums, which we are doing across all the schools in our country. They can get into debate
Right.
competition. They can get into elocution. Because if somebody has to speak for 10 minutes, practically speaking, to make that speech and to make that delivery really impactful, right? That
Mhm.
person actually needs to spend few hours of reading.
Absolutely.
And that reading comes with a better polish when that person is discussing whatever he has read and he has put that on his paper. He needs to again talk to somebody, because although we cannot talk with a lot of people because of COVID-19 and all this lockdown and all of this global outbreak, but especially after this, the moment we are out in the real world, it's extremely important with these emerging trends and all, we talk library and talk to one intelligent person. That's what I feel.
Right.
So
So
always keep
you
in touch.
brought in a very important. Uh-huh. Please, please.
Sorry, British.
So you brought in a very important point that if I have to present something for 10 minutes, I have to prepare hours for that. So this is where I'm taking a small deviation for a minute. And I would like to thank all the teachers out there, who are taking online lectures across the world, especially Singhania schools. Thank you so much. Let me tell you, parents, your teachers are spending hours and hours and hours preparing for those online PPTs before they actually reach your child. So thank you to all the teacher fraternity for going that extra mile, taking that extra step in reaching out to the parents.
And
Yes, Pranay.
most importantly, we would also have a lot of, in fact, these are those times when every parent will realize the power of teacher, the power
Absolutely.
of a teacher and the power of teaching. So it's as good as a surgeon doing his surgery,
Yes.
an FRCS or an MS surgeon performing a performing a major surgery in the operation theater and allowing
Right.
all his relatives to enter the operation theater. So these
Right.
are those times when
Oh, yes. Wonderfully.
so,
Very well put.
so all the teachers are actually getting through that mental minute. Every principal is also going through that enormous amount of stress in these times, because even though she's able to understand, but she cannot do anything much about it, because
Right.
every parent is unique, every child is unique, every batch is unique. So my
Absolutely.
deepest respect and my deepest gratitude to all the teachers. The amount of work that they're doing during these times, it is remarkably brilliant, especially when
Absolutely.
they have their husbands at home. All of us are also demanding certain things new every single day. They have
Yes.
their own children who are also working on different laptops, different screens.
Right.
So there is positive screen time, there is negative screen time. That's a different topic for another day. They have their own modules to be covered. They have to manage the kitchen. They have to manage the house. They have to manage with all the devices. They have to manage their data plans. They have to understand all their program deliveries. They have to understand all their assessments. So this is that
Absolutely.
time when every person, I think this year they should cancel the Oscars. This year they should cancel the Filmfare Awards, and every teacher should be felicitated on that red carpet this year.
Brilliant. Thank you. So, teachers, thank you so much from all of us here. Thank you so much for that note, right? And as I was saying, as Pranay very correctly put it, all the awards this year should be dedicated only to the teachers. And
Yes.
there's a lighter note, there's a joke going around that if the vaccine doesn't come out in a month, one of the parents is going to come out with it for sure. They want the children to go home, not to be home anymore, right?
Very,
So I'm
very
going to
well said.
combine the next two questions. How do I control ego? For example, let's say I'm talking to some person and the other person is not listening to me. The ego
Mhm.
definitely gets damaged, impacted. How does he not give importance to me? So what do you do in such a situation? How do you control your ego?
So when you say the other person is not giving importance to me, right? And it's
Or
getting
listening, or rather not, not very attentive when I'm speaking or something of that sort.
okay. So remember one thing: we are all borrowers over here. So if he's not listening to us, one of the things is everything that we have around us, even the air that we have, right, it's not ours.
Right.
Anything that is there, and if he's not giving, that is just a molecule of that attention, a molecule of that importance which we are talking about, right?
Right.
So one thing, if he's not giving attention to us, if that's the question, if I've understood it rightly, one is to understand and go and ask him, is there anything else I can do something better to make sure that you can behave well with me?
Right.
Is there anything that I can do better to make sure your reaction towards me will change significantly? So there are certain positive signs which we are experiencing, like ego deaths, which I say. So one of them is
Right.
not just a person but a mask. The other person is like the Greek gods, right? Like the Greek face, like what the Greeks did earlier in those ancient times. They used to wear a mask. So the
Right.
other person is, and sometimes it's completely all right because we don't need to have all the importance all the time. It's
Right.
absolutely all right because this is something to do with the anxiety of your importance. Why is he not asking me? I have sent a
Right.
message, but he has still not replied to me. I have sent an email, but he has still not replied to me. So not just in physical way, but also in electronic
Yes.
form. I have sent a message on a group, but he has still not responded back. I am the X person. I am on the C-suite level of this organization. He has read my message, but he has still not responded back to me. That is something called a status anxiety. So that is the
Right.
moment when we need to talk about killing that part and just putting that ego on that deathbed.
Right. 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 Absolutely well put. So we have taken two more questions for the day, and then we wind up the session.
Sure.
First is, how do we say no to a person without hurting that person, without him feeling bad? Because this is one thing that is very awkward for all of us in India. How do I
Uh-huh.
need to say no to somebody senior or some adult in the family? I may not want to do something, but I don't know how to say no. So how do you do that? What is your advice on that?
This happens especially in India. We cannot say
Right.
no, right? So some people
Absolutely.
try to take undue advantage of our knowledge. Some people try to take undue advantage of our intellect. Some people try to take undue advantage of our network. Some people try to
Right.
take undue advantage of our money. Some people try to take
Yes.
undue advantage of our time. So a lot of times it becomes absolutely impossible for us to say no. But a good
Absolutely.
professional really starts progressing in life the moment he starts saying no. It's absolutely okay for you to say no in the initial stages because you're not here to satisfy everybody. You're not here to please everybody. So
Right.
there's a way you can say no with a very high level of dignity, maintaining the maintenance of that dignity over there. And most
Right.
importantly, what you should do is say no without hurting the other person's ego and keeping his ego intact.
Right.
And as good as, let's say, even if you have to say no, that's also equally
Uh-huh.
important. If you have
Right.
to say no, and if you have to make the other person, and more than we saying no, it's important for us to accept no.
Absolutely.
We are not used to listening no, especially if we are in different
Yes.
ranks of authority. So if this
Right.
is the first thing which we need to develop in our country across all the professional practices, across all the professional fraternities of the world, that if somebody is asking us for a leave, let's say as
Hmm.
simple as that, if somebody is asking, can I be on leave for 3 days?
Right.
You don't need to say no right away,
Right.
and you need to say no with such a high level of keeping that ego intact, high level of way of keeping that ego intact, that even if you're saying no, for that matter, let's say if you have to fire an employee, Brajesh,
Hmm.
so you don't need to tell him you are not good, you have not done this, you have not done this, for always you have been saying no. So there is a
Right.
way to say it and there is a way to do it. You can tell him that.
Absolutely.
So most importantly, even a small person can create a big turmoil in your organization.
Right. Right.
So it's essentially very important to, when you say no, tell the other person is in complete grace, tell the other person in complete conviction, and more than argument and more than debate, it's important for you to reason with the other person why you are saying no. Because if you're
Right.
saying it sensibly with some logic, the person will listen to you. And even if he
Perfect.
is higher in your rank, it's absolutely all right. Because sometimes you
Absolutely.
cannot be available for the other person 24 by 7, right?
Right. 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 Perfect. Makes a lot of sense.
Especially in this time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, last question for the day.
Sure.
How do you correct someone else's body language and the tone of their voice? The person may be your colleague, or he may be your boss for that matter, or sometimes even the in laws, from a parent's perspective. So, how do you do that?
So in your in-laws, I think the best person could be use your spouse's help. Okay, so there
Right.
is no need to get in those gray areas because no matter how brilliant a professional you are, how brilliant a world grandmaster communication champion you are, there are certain areas. Again, some humor over here. In in-laws, in family, it's okay to keep it little neutral over here because
Right.
every now and then when you try to correct them, it will not be taken in the right spirit. So as good as
Absolutely.
if I have to tell somebody, But if I have to say something to my mother or something to my mother-in-law,
Right.
the best way if I have to say something to my father-in-law or my mother-in-law, I will take my spouse's help. Because if they say the same thing to them, that will be taken in a different way. But at the same
Different
time,
manner,
if
absolutely.
I'm saying the same thing, and if the same thing goes with her also, if she's saying something to my parents, it will be taken other way. But if the same thing I'm telling them, it will be taken in a
Right.
different way. It's as simple as this example. Let's say Brijesh, if I'm talking to you and I'm saying, hey Brijesh, you're looking like a custard apple.
Right.
You'll not feel bad. But the
Absolutely.
moment I say, hey Brijesh, you're so selfish,
Of course, the ego
you will
comes into
feel,
play.
yes. The moment I
Yes.
say an emotion into it, that's it. Again, I'm coming back to the same question. How do you tell people no, especially in your organization? How do you tell
Right.
people, especially when it comes to their body language? First thing first, if that person is important to you, if that person has some influence in your circle, it is important, it is relevant, it is required. Otherwise, there is no need for you to go and correct everybody, because still in our country, especially in India, if you go and correct the other person on their body language, it is not taken in the right spirit. Yes,
Right.
professionally, if you're all representing one organization, if there is a sales team, if there is a team which is completely talking to for admissions with the parents, there is a way to maintain. So there is a professional training, there is a professional degree of understanding. And the best way for you to do is don't do it. Get some professional from outside. So there is no need for you to fire all the bullets from your own gun.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? So take some
Makes a lot of
professional
sense.
help, go the other way around, keep the gun on somebody else's shoulder, tell the other person what are your requirements and do it. This way,
Right.
the message is gone and the ego is intact.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Thank you so much, Pranay. That was such a wonderful session. So many things to learn for all of us on communication, on managing egos, and thank you for answering those questions so patiently and wonderfully. Giving point by point solutions to most of our questions. We are
Thank
really,
you.
really delighted that you could take out time and be on the SESL platform. We thank you once again wholeheartedly. We thank you, Revti ma'am, for having you on the platform. So thank you so much, and we look forward to having you once again on the platform sometime later on. Thank you so much, Pranay.
Thank you very much, Brijesh. You must be very proud of yourself because you guys are doing a brilliant job throughout this COVID-19 outbreak. And thank you very much for inviting me for the Singhania School initiative on talking about managing egos and the art of communication. I once again thank all the teachers, all the parents, all the students, and all other viewers who are listening to this program. And if at all you have any questions, feel free to write to me. I'll be very happy to answer each one of them. And last but not the least, I'll just end up with a quote over here. Uh, our ego is a silent partner, too often with a controlling interest. It's a beautiful quote by Colin Hightar, and he says that there is no need for you to let your ego drive all your things in life, because what really matters here is ego is a very beautiful servant, but a very ugly-looking master. Thank you very much, everyone. It's
Perfect.
been a pleasure talking and interacting with all of you. You guys have been absolutely awesome.
Thank you so much, Pranay. Such a pleasure having you here. So, dear parents, we had yet another wonderful session today, thanks to Mr. Pranay. And now we'll see you on next Sunday, 21st of June, with a doctor and an environmentalist, Dr. Lata. She'll be addressing on lot of points, Dr. Lata Ghanshamnani. She's a doctor and environmentalist. So the topic is going to be unlocking the lockdown, the way forward. So a lot of changing mindsets are going to be required. There's a different new normal in our lives now. So how do we tackle that and how do we start fresh from here? So that will be all from our side. Thank you so much, students. Thank you, parents. Thank you, Pranay. Thank you, Revti ma'am, for having us all of here. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Brajesh. Thank you very much.